Hey everybody. Hey, this is Deborah Atkinson and I'm coming to you from Flipping 50. And what I'm going to do is something just a little bit different. This is actually about to be a blog, but I'm going to make it live. I'm going to bring it live here, both on Instagram and on YouTube, and we're going to get it posted everywhere. So here's a question that I get a lot. It's like, what's the best kind of exercise? So is it low intensity to reduce my cortisol levels, which is a great question? Is it high intensity interval training because we know that burns more fat? Also another great question. And then here's one other very sexy, very 2020 word that's being thrown around a lot. It's called METCON. Now, I don't get asked about Metcon nearly as much as I get asked about low intensity exercise like yoga and walking and high intensity interval training. But here's Metcon, and I'm going to define it because I'm starting to see it being tossed out, and sometimes something getting thrown out there because it's new and it's sexy, and we may think, oh my gosh, this is it. But that is like following every single new next New York Times best-selling diet book, right? So how many of those do you have on your shelf? I bet I could go into the other room and pull out 10 of them. Some of them by friends, and I love and respect them, but every one of those diets is not the ticket. You're not still doing it, even if you started doing it. And the same goes for exercise. There are fewer exercise books out there. And part of that is because it's hard to write about exercise in a way that is easy to digest and understand. And illustrations and photos don't always come across the same way. It's easy to write a recipe, but not quite so easy to write exercise. But I want to explain this. So first of all, what is Metcon? What does it stand for? Am I speaking a whole new language? And in a way, yes. So if you are a follower of CrossFit, and I am by no means throwing CrossFit under the bus, any program you follow is only as good as the trainer or the instructor and the supervision that you've got. That's all I'm going to say about that. What is Metcon? It's actually taking two words and putting them together to marry them into a new word. And it stands for metabolic conditioning. METCON, metabolic conditioning, which still is very elusive. So a lot of people don't know, is a METCON workout an interval training workout? Well, not exactly, is my only way to answer that. But if you've ever done this, in Flipping 50 workouts, especially the boxing workouts that I will do for use at home or anywhere, I will do upper body and then we'll do a lower body drill. We'll do an upper body and a lower body drill. So when we're doing that, there is no let's do a high intensity work and then let's do recovery, because they're both fairly high intensity or meant to be. They're the intensity according to the intention you give them. So, right? It depends on your effort. I can give you the exercise, but I cannot give you the motivation to make it harder. But doing that is high intensity followed by high intensity. The break or the rest you get is only for that body part. Then we go on to do it somewhere else. So your heart, your circulation is not getting a break. So Metcon is repeated higher intensity effort. And it stands for metabolic conditioning, Metcon. So after all, I mean, it's very similar to menopause. I mean, what is that? It's like menstruation or menses plus pause. It's the same thing, right? Same kind of word music, word puzzling, word smithing. Okay, so it's usually a sequence of challenging exercises, often repeated and without real rest, at least not rest during that set, but you get, again, like rest for, okay, I'm doing upper body, now I'm doing lower body, so I'm going to get a little rest for that body part. So we can kind of say, all right, I can still keep going. If you've ever done boxing, you get it. But in case you haven't done boxing, so let's say you've gone to a boot camp and you've done battle ropes. So you've held onto the battle ropes and you've been doing that and you had to do that for a minute. After a minute, you feel like your arms are going to fall off if you're doing it hard. And you couldn't do that anymore. But it's not as if you're so breathless, you're going to fall over. You're potentially like, you could go and do squats, or you could do lunges, you could do jump rope, but you just can't do the same thing with the arms anymore. And the idea is we're going to move you from one thing to the next. So the idea of boot camp a lot of times was built on that METCON, even before we were using that term. So if it helps you to understand it, you can use the word boot camp instead, and it's probably very similar. But I'm going to tell you, I've got some reservations about METCON or boot camp types of workouts, and I'll explain to them what they are for women who are over 40 and women who are over 50 for sure. And they may be concerns for younger people as well, depending on what your goals are. And I'll get to that. So I'm going to give you about 6 points that I want you to consider to know. So before I defined it, now I want to, before I go on, I want to let you know what it's not. What is METCON or what is boot camp not? Because it's important that you know what it's not equally as much as it's important that you know what it is. It's not a weight training workout designed to support lean muscle tissue maintenance and gains, particularly for women who are over 40. Because as we start to lose our estrogen and, of course, yes, our testosterone and our growth hormone, we're going to struggle to build or even maintain our lean muscle tissue as easily as we did when we were 25 and we looked pretty good without trying. Do you remember those days? Yeah. All right. So next, what METCON is not, it's not a good way to recover if you include strength training exercises in them. So if you're going to boot camp 5 or 6 days a week and you're just doing strength training exercises randomly thrown in because this is intense and your trainer is alternating muscle groups, but from day to day to day, you're overdoing the use of those same muscles. You're breaking them down, and breaking them down. Because exercise, if you really know what exercise is a breakdown activity. And here's the greatest quote I ever got during a podcast, and this is from Joe Friel. I can't claim it. I wish I could, but he said this to me, and he's written the Triathlete's Training Bible, might have written the Runner's Training Bible, Joe Friel, so you want to definitely check him out. But he said, remember that exercise is only something that provides the opportunity for fitness. It's in the recovery between exercise, and that includes the time between workouts, as well as the sleep and the hydration and the adequate nutrition that you have between them that allows the fitness to happen. And that you have to remember. So a METCON workout, if it's super hard and involves strength training exercises, is not a good recovery move. Now, if it's only cardiovascular in nature, and I use that with a broad term. So cardiovascular can be high intensity interval training workout. It can be lower in terms of, say, just walking. But if it's got you breathing more, you're doing repetitive movements and getting your heart rate elevated in the boxing, in bike riding and running or walking or hills or ellipticals or any number of activities, but not strength training, then it still could be used as recovery from strength training workouts. The other thing that METCON is not is it shouldn't be, anyway, just random exercises done in rapid succession. Now, when I say it shouldn't be, it often is. So often, boot camps are not really well planned out. So a boot camp instructor sometimes, and I won't say that yours does this, but sometimes is just designing a workout randomly, like on the fly, spontaneously, go into a room, set up exercises because they know these exercises. but hasn't really planned based on what you did yesterday or what you're going to do tomorrow and how recovered you are, what else you've done. And that really should be happening. So you want to plan, not random exercises, if you want definite results, right? So you don't want random results. You want to know, what am I going to get? You got to have a good plan to get there. Okay, so I'm going to give you 6 things. How can you get the benefits of that higher fat burning that happens after Metcon activities? That's the purpose of it, is that not during. So it's short, or should be, because it's higher intensity. You don't burn a lot of calories during anything that's short. However, the afterburn, we call it what you burn to pay your body back from all of the oxygen you've used, from the additional circulation that it had to provide, from the extra nutrients that had to go to the working muscles. You do a payback that happens for hours, even up to days after exercise, depending on how strenuous it was and or sometimes how long. We don't want to go for endurance right now, not in midlife and not in COVID-19, when we're all a little bit more at risk, and your number one concern should be your strong immune system. And I'll tell you what, you get a 2-for-1. If you're planning on your strong immune system, you get balanced hormones. Bonus, right? So who doesn't want that? And, often it's a lot easier than you think. But here are the 6 things that'll help you get the benefits of the higher fat burning that happens after Metcon workouts and reduce the risk. So just a side note, since we've seen the advent of interval training come and stay, and we know it's not just a trend, it's here to stay, and everybody's doing it. Doesn't matter if you're a teenager and you're in sports, if you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even in your 80s, there can be interval training, and it should be happening. We need to get breathless, because you're going to actually be much healthier and have more longevity if you do that your entire life. But injury rates have gone up like 544%. And trust me, I'm in Aries. I can be dramatic, but that is not pulling something dramatic out of my hat. That is literally what we know. So corresponding injury rates elevated at the same time our use of interval training did across the board. So we can, and we know we can, optimize benefits and decrease risks if we're smart about how we use it, how we recover. So here they are in more rapid fire. Number 1, we're going to reduce the risk of injury, first of all, by choosing simple, safe, low-impact exercises that can be performed without losing form. So I'm going to say this to everyone here who's in midlife and beyond, and you are not broken, nothing wrong with you. However, I don't know many midlife people, men or women, who can do burpees rapidly with great form and not risk injury. So if you're going to do them for 30 seconds or for a minute, most of the time in a situation where you're trying to elevate your heart rate, somebody is telling you to work against the clock, do as many as possible. Inevitably, to go faster, you lose good form, you lose good technique. I mean, that's true of anything. If I asked you to write down something or write it down as neatly as possible, you're not going to if I ask you to write it quickly, right? So you're going to lose something in that transformation. And there are so many things that can go wrong with a burpee. From your wrist to your elbows to your shoulders to your lower back, on the way down and on the way up, not to mention getting dizzy, potentially, depending on who you are. Kettlebell swings. There's a question about whether you can do them. Do they fit a Metcon workout? Absolutely. However, I rarely do them. I rarely demonstrate them. I rarely put them in workouts, any of my programs. You won't see them. And here's why, because I'm talking one to many. to hundreds and thousands, and I can't see you. And we don't know until it's too late if you are one of those individuals who will have shear forces in the spine that occur when you do that exercise, such that it's bringing you closer and closer to injury the more you do them. I don't know that. And neither do you, unfortunately. So I rarely do things like that again, that rush against the clock, have you doing them, but also I don't know whether you should or not. So if I'm weighing risk and reward, I'm always going to go for the reward without the risk. So if there's another way to do something that I can still get great results, that's the one I'm going to go for. Number 2 is go hard enough. So we do need to work hard. So if you're over 40, one of the things throughout all of the exercise research and literature in helping reduce body fat, helping support less or elimination of that visceral belly fat that puts you at more heart risk is go hard enough, adequate intensity. Tabata protocols designed by Dr. Izumi Tabata. This was years ago, but it was done with elite cyclists. Do you remember it? Tabata. You've heard of it. Everybody says, do it, but we forget. It was done and tested on elite cyclists, males, young males, who did 170% of their VO2 max effort level. Do you know what that is? That is throwing up in a wastebasket after you're done and maybe before you finish. And trust me, I've seen that. I taught college fitness courses in physiology to fitness majors, pre-PT majors, pre-med majors, and they had to fitness test themselves. And often we were doing that on a Monday. So there was a lot of wastebasket stuff going on, and we were not working that hard. That is incredibly hard, and most of us are not doing that. So I've never seen anyone work that hard, not in 36 years, and I've worked with athletes as well as beginners. But here's what we need to consider is that we can't take a protocol designed for them and then say, okay, we're going to wash that down. We're not going to work quite as hard, but we're going to use the same kind of protocol, and then we expect the same results. It's not going to work that way. So we've got to go hard enough, but also be responsible for the fact that we've got to find protocols that actually work for real people who have real jobs, who may have had a really great life and have some real knee issues or hip issues. We can still work hard. We just have to find the smarter way to do it. And the third thing is progress before you have less risk than work. One of the things we need to remember about Tabata intervals is it was 20 seconds of hard work and 10 seconds of recovery, done 8 times for a 4-minute exercise session or cycle. Now, that just dumped progression out. And progression is a principle of fitness that if you and I want results, but we also don't want results and then an injury. You don't want to be that person saying, I was in the best shape of my life before I got hurt. Because I've heard that a lot of times in 3.5 decades. We want to be really smart about how we're exercising. And the way to do that is progress. So no one ever would suggest that you do half as much rest as you do work when you're beginning. But if you are a beginner and you walk into a group fitness room or to a boot camp, that is what will happen. You'll do Tabata because that's the article that the fitness trainer has read, and that is the sexy thing to do. What you should be doing is doing at least equal or double the time of your work. Your rest should be that. So instead of doing 20 and 10, it should be 10 and 20, 10 seconds of work and 20. And that's not a good example. It's only the time example because 10 seconds isn't long enough to do anything. But if you do, for instance, 30 seconds of work, you want to do a minute or a minute and a half of recovery. And if you're going to do a minute of high intensity exercise training, then you want to do maybe 2 minutes or 2.5 of recovery. And you want to have that feeling of pushing the gas and pushing the brake because that will get you to your fitness level a little bit faster. All right. quickly through. Number 4 is avoid 1980 rules to 2020 intervals. So if you are over 50, you grew up doing hour-long sessions. We don't want to take those interval training sessions and say, oh, a little is good, more must be better, and do hour-long interval training sessions, because we're defeating the purpose. We will wash it all up, and then we will also be overtraining. Nobody can get good results when they're overtraining. Number 5 is you want to avoid eccentric exercise. When you're doing Metcon, that cardio and high cardio workout, eccentric exercise is great during strength training, and it's needed during strength training to help you make the most gains in keeping your muscle, right? Yeah, so if you want to go sleeveless and you want to have some definition here, you're going to need to do some eccentric training. That means go slow on the down. But if you're doing a lot of jumping, you're doing a lot of sprinting, you're doing a lot of squats and lunges in your Metcon workouts that are supposed to be cardiovascular in nature, you're making yourself sore and you're tearing down and breaking down, damaging muscle again and again and again. You can't build up pretty muscle and a high metabolism doing that. So you've got to avoid those kinds of movements. Number 6, last but not least, it's most important, you have to pick a goal. So decide, I know that we want it all. For instance, we want to lose fat, we want to gain lean muscle, we want to have more tone, we want to have more energy, we want to have more sleep, we want to flatten the belly. Okay, I get it. I could sign up for all those too, but you want to pick one. What's the most important thing that you want to do right now? And you can then move on to the next one. And because you're doing one, you may get some benefits of the next one, but you want to have one focus. So Metcon is wonderful for fat loss. Super helpful for doing that. As long as you keep them short, you alternate them, give yourself adequate rest, but you can't try to do all things all the time. So choose one, and there you have it. And this will be included in my blog, and it's coming out tomorrow. So if you'd like to read it and absorb it, there it will be for you. So I can't wait to hear your comments. I'd love for you to post them on the blog once it's up, and that'll be at flipping50.com/Metcon. Have a great day.